So if you'll join me in reflecting as we start this morning or afternoon together. Om Namo Arihantanam. Om Namo Siddhanam. Om Namo Aryanam. Om Namo Vajrayanam. Namo Loe Sava Sahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Savapava Panasano Mangalanam cha Save Singh Paramam Have Mangalam. Jai Jinendra, and welcome to the Ahimsak EcoVegan Committee of JAINA's first webinar, Ahimsa in Action, with Shaleen and Shilpi Shah of Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary. Thank you all for joining us. And I'd like to give you a short orientation to our committee, and then we'll turn it over to Shaleen and Shilpa. So I'll share my screen and give you just a couple of slides to orient you to our committee. Just a moment. Okay, so my name is JAINA Shah, and I'm the chair of the Ahimsa EcoVegan Committee of JAINA. I'm a family doctor by training, and my passion is advancing as expressions of Ahimsa veganism, which is not eating, wearing, or using animal products, and reducing and eliminating activities contributing to global climate change and destruction of the planet. And our committee supports as expressions of Ahimsa all of these objectives by encouraging personal transformation, community education, and advocacy. So to advance our objectives, we have implemented this new speaker series. And our first speaker is Shaleen and Shilpi Shah. So I'll come back to the other slides at the end, but I think we might all be kind of excited to hear from Shaleen and Shilpi. And so let me tell you a little bit about them. Shaleen and Shilpi are the founders of Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary near Denver, Colorado. They are spreading the values of Ahimsa, Jivdaya, and Karuna towards farmed animals, actively creating a more compassionate community for the animals and our planet. These unlikely sanctuary founders, as they describe themselves, and dedicated Jains, grew up in India before moving to the United States. Since founding the sanctuary in 2015, Shaleen and Shilpi have grown Luvin Arms substantially, already having saved nearly 800 animal lives and welcoming thousands of visitors each year. Along with Luvin Arms, Shaleen and Shilpi have created another nonprofit called opensanctuary.org that freely publishes hundreds of resources on how to start, manage, and grow an animal sanctuary. Shaleen and Shilpi make a living as software consultant and tax or accounting consultant, respectively. They live in Boulder, Colorado, with their two young boys, Arav and Avi. And just before we go to Shaleen and Shilpi's presentation, can we have the audience poll? So I want to acknowledge in the background, we have two of our committee members that are helping us. So Christian Kohler will be helping to administer the poll in the background. He's a member of the Ahimsa EcoVegan Committee. And Kablesh Baimeta has kindly facilitated this whole webinar for us. He's hosting. He's the vice president of JITO, which has also enabled us to use the Zoom platform. So could we start that first poll before we go to the presentation? So all the participants should see a poll pop up with a question. So the question is, have you visited a sanctuary or a Banjapur? And we'll give it a minute. And we'll see among our participants, so far we have 15, how many answers we can get.
All right, we see the votes coming in. Please keep voting. We'll give it another minute, or not a minute, another 10 seconds or so, and then we're gonna end the poll. All right. This is great. Thank you all for your votes. We're gonna close it here. And here are the results.
So more than half have visited a sanctuary at Banjapur, and that's wonderful, but at least 5 people out of the 13 that took the poll have not. Whether you have or have not been to a sanctuary at Banjapur, let's hear more about Shaleen and Shilpi's story. So I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us.
Thank you.
We're so excited to be here and to share some of the work that we're doing. So to start out with, I wanted to answer a question that we get very, very often, which is, how did this all come about? So I'm going to share my screen and kind of talk about that story. Because, like Gina introduced us as being unlikely sanctuary founders, is because we never really, that wasn't part of our life goals. In fact, just a couple of months before starting a sanctuary, this is the photo of our family. We had 2 little ones, and we were just kind of living an ordinary life. I ran a business, and Shilpi is a CPA. And a devoted mother. And like I said, this photo was just a couple of months before the sanctuary, so you can see how young our 2 boys are. And we were just completely unaware at this point about the tremendous change that was about to come into our lives. Truly, the kids were the center of our world at this time. In fact, when Arav, our oldest, was born, he inspired us to go vegan. And when Avi was born, we were attracted for the first time to bring animals into our lives. And the very first animal that ever came into our life was a horse, a Holly. And this is like, we've never had any other pets, no dogs, no cats or birds. This was our first. So I guess we believe in the motto of go big. But the reason why we adopted Holly, I feel now, was all for the wrong reasons. And that's because I love to ride. And I used to ride horses in India, and I used to ride horses here in the US. And when Holly came into our lives, it was the first time that I actually saw the horse for the horse and not what I wanted from her. And I realized just, how incredible horses are, and how smart she was, and how complex her thoughts and emotions were. And, slowly we started to learn more about horses and their plight here in the US, and knew that even more horses needed rescue. So we didn't have land, but we could rent boarding for the horses. So we set out to try to rescue more. And the very next one was Niblet. And this is Niblet with our little boy, Avi. They were both just about 1.5 years old in this picture. And, Niblet was unwanted, and he was being sold at an auction, and that's where he was rescued from. He was just going to be disposed of.
He was a baby.
Yeah, just a baby, just like Avi in this picture. And when they met, both of them, they just immediately connected with each other, and really trusted each other, and were comfortable being with each other like that. And
it was amazing how in this picture, Avi walks Niblet around in a circle. And when Avi was about 18 months old in this picture, and every time he would stop, Niblet would stop, a couple of feet away from Avi to not, come on him. And it's just amazing how animals know and feel and understand, how and when to be careful. And we experience that in this and at that moment here in this picture.
We just resolved in us more that we need to do more rescues. And at that time, we were just focused on horses because we didn't have land. Then we heard about this mare, a female horse, and two babies, foals, that were at a auction being sent to slaughter. This was just a little far from our home, but we decided that we must go and try to save them. So we gathered some cash and drove up. And what we saw there was just hundreds and hundreds of other farmed animals, and many of them were just babies. And we had to wait 6 hours at this auction and see these hundreds of different animals being pushed and prodded and kicked and pulled into the auction floor, being sold by the pound. And it was just such a horrific and heartbreaking day while we were waiting for these horses to come to the same auction floor to be sold by the pound. Luckily, we were able to rescue the horses, but the whole way, driving to the boarding facility, we were just praying out to the universe that if only we had land, if only we had some more space, that we could have rescued a few more from that auction. So many that we saw there. And unbelievably, that same night, as we were unloading the horses at the boarding facility, we get a call out of nowhere from a contact saying there's 23 acres 2 miles from your house that's available for lease. Do you know somebody who could use it? And it was like God was answering our prayers right then and there, and was showing us that we needed to do something. And that was the moment that we decided that we need to do something. As afraid as we were, we had never managed land. We had barely taken care of animals. The horses we had were in a boarding facility being cared for. We had no idea what we were doing. But the very next day, we signed the lease because that's what the universe was showing us as a path in front of us. But the property was in shambles. There was trash everywhere, and we had no idea what we were doing. And there's like 6 foot tall, prickly and thorny weeds out in the field. And there was just so much to be done to make this place suitable for animals. And then one day, a neighbor posted on Facebook that this couple is trying to help animals and convert this property. And 35 strangers showed up, and they stayed all day, and they kept coming for several weeks thereafter. And they helped clean the property and fix the property and make the property safe and habitable for rescued animals.
We even had kids help us during these work days that we call in the beginning. Even now, we have a lot of kids activities and involvement at the sanctuary.
Including our own, our 2 little ones, helped clean and paint and get the sanctuary ready for animals. And this was the moment that we realized that it's not just about us saving a few lives on this land, that it's not just about those animals either. Like, this is about the people, and it is about creating a community through compassion, really connecting people together through this values of ahimsa and karuna and jiva, and really making a true change in this world. And this is truly the moment when Luvin Arms was born, that it wasn't just a rescue that we were going to do. It is something bigger than that, something that will mark a sea wave of change in the community around us. And now, today, 5 years later, we're blessed enough to be able to have our own land. We have 40 acres of our own property that we can continue to develop for the animals that we've been able to rescue. We've also been able to save over close to 800 lives directly and tens of thousands of others through education. And our lives have changed. We are now different people, and we are doing something for the animals on the planet and for our community. And our kids are different. They're connecting with the world and animals around them in a very different way. But we continue to do this as connecting community through compassion is really our big focus at Luvin Arms. So thank you. To learn more, donate, and visit, please go to our website, and we'll continue to talk more about Luvin Arms.
What a beautiful story. I think all of us are really touched. Thank you for sharing that. I would like to invite the audience members to start putting any questions that they have into the Q&A box. So think about any questions that you may have in your mind after having heard this. And in the meantime, I'm going to introduce a couple of other members of our Ahimsak EcoVegan committee that will answer some questions and also be part of the discussion. So we have Shilpi Shah, who's here with us. She and her husband, Kayur, have been vegan for 15 years. Just after their first child was born. They also run a business in the Bay Area, and they have 3 healthy teenagers raised on a compassionate diet. They're always available to help families transition towards veganism, and they're actually the family that's featured on the vegan outreach booklet that has as the audience the Indian American community. So also I'd like to introduce Mohit Jain. Mohit, after working in the corporate world and being educated at UC Berkeley, he realized that his lifelong obsession with fast food was causing a lot of harm to his body, and went overnight from Taco Bell connoisseur to health crusader, maintaining a healthy lifestyle through proper nutrition, daily exercise, and regular meditation. And the Jain values that Mohit grew up with also motivate him to contribute to Jain organizations and other causes such as Immigranted, Mercy for Animals, and on our committee. So Mohit and Shilpa are going to be helping with running the next part of the Q&A. And just to get us started, I'll put a question in here for Shilpi and Shaleen, which the question is, how would you connect the values you've talked about, which are very Jain values, the Jivdaya and Karuna, with your message when you have people coming in from all over to the sanctuary? Like, we have a different language that we speak within the community versus outside the community, but is there a way in which you can convey that without using those words for people who might not be familiar? And how do you use the words differently when you have Jain people coming to visit?
Yeah, I think the values that that Jainism is truly founded on are universal values. It's that people can connect to the values of nonviolence and of compassion. That is exactly the message that we talk about.
Yeah, even the community outside of the Jain community, when they come visit, when we even talk about, use the word ahimsa, they know and understand. And I think just all the values and principles that Jains and the Jain religion has is just universal, that would be understood. And I think it's the emotions about, these are living beings. The animals are also living beings like us, and we're just all one. On this planet, we have to coexist with each other.
It's so nice to hear that resonates. Are there other questions from the panelists or that have come through the Q&A box? I'll invite Shilpa or Mohit to unmute and share.
There is a question from the audience, from Avinash. It's, I'll read it out loud. It says, I wonder if you could write a book on the whole experience of starting and operating a sanctuary, e.g. We Brought a Zoo, which is a book and also a movie. It will help if you make it as detailed as possible. How much was funded by yourself from donations from any government or private foundations, success in getting grants, etc. Sort of like a textbook for anyone aspiring to do the same elsewhere. I found your immense success with volunteers a little abnormal, as the nonprofit I work with is so short on volunteers, even to sign a petition. So maybe you guys can speak to a little bit about how you got so many volunteers and your experience and thoughts on writing a book eventually.
Yeah, we the way we think about our volunteers is that it's not us who are, we may be the founders of the sanctuary, but it's really the volunteers and the community that comes together to create the fabric of the work that we do. We think of ourselves as mere gardeners who planted a seed for a tree of compassion, and our volunteers are the roots that is growing this tree. And so
volunteers, donors, all our supporters.
Yes, and that, I think we do have a lot of volunteers, and it is absolutely amazing. We have over 2,500 volunteers over the past 5 years. We routinely see, over 40 hours a day volunteered at the sanctuary. But we attribute that to just the work that we're doing and the openness and the culture that is created around the work that we do, and the inclusiveness. We did also think a lot about, in the process of starting the sanctuary, everything was very difficult. We had never done this before. And even Googling for how to take care of a pig, most of the times you get things that teach farmers how to grow pigs for slaughter. You don't get the resources on how to actually care for an individual life like a pig's for their full length of time. Even the food that is made for them is made specifically to make them gain weight to be killed. And, during that time, when it was so difficult for us to find those resources, that's what we envisioned was Open Sanctuary, which is a nonprofit we were able to launch a couple of years in to creating a sanctuary, which freely publishes hundreds and hundreds of very well-researched, very thorough and detailed articles on how to start, run, and grow an animal sanctuary.
Or even some individuals have rescued, they don't have a big sanctuary, but they rescue a few chickens that they can keep in their backyard, and they want to know how to take care of them for the rest of their lives. So it's a resource not just for sanctuary founders or caretakers, but also for people who they're just taking care of farm animals in general. Yeah. And even a lot of veterinarians are also using Open Sanctuary resource actually now. So yeah.
But thank you for the question.
Thank you for that in-depth answer too. Avinash has also added, if you come to NYC area, we would like to meet you and host a lecture. Avinash, be sure to reach out to them with their contact information. They'll share again. We have another question from an anonymous attendee. Can you please share the different types of animals that are found in your Loving Home Sanctuary?
Yes, absolutely. So we focused on all types of farmed animals that are mostly used for food, because that is the change that we're trying to make. So we have every type of animal from chickens, hens and roosters. We have goats, sheep, turkeys, ducks, cows, and pigs, and horses. Yeah.
And as a follow-up to that, Christian asked, how many animals do you currently take care of?
Yeah, So we've rescued close to 800. We have very limited space and resources at the sanctuary. So at the sanctuary, we have close to 120. But for the rest of them, we've been able to find loving homes and caring homes around the country that we've been able to place them in different places.
It's mostly the chickens that we rescued, around 700 chickens.
What challenges have you faced, if any, that are worth sharing?
With challenges. There's probably too many to list. But I think, you know, our biggest challenge has been just, you know, how do we do the rescues in the right way? You know, it's what we don't want to do is, through our rescue effort, actually perpetuate the harm that is being done to animals. So a lot of times when we pay money to save lives, that money just goes into the wrong hands, and then they end up actually harming more animals in the long term. And so we don't pay for life. You know, we do rescues in a way where there is no money exchanged to be able to rescue them. And so that's, you know, each rescue becomes a very challenging conversation to navigate through, to actually convince somebody who is not as caring for animals to be able to give up those animals.
And then someone asked, how can we locally become part of such activities? Any advice?
Absolutely. Yeah, towards the end of the presentation, I will share a few ways to create more impact locally.
Great. And then can you share any likes or habits of the animals that you may have not known before running a sanctuary?
Oh, yes.
Many.
Yeah, before running a sanctuary, you know, the perception that we had was, you know, animals are simple, that they lead a simple life, that they are, you know, somehow just kind of programmed to do these few things. And that's, you know, kind of the wider perception that most people have. But really getting to know them, you know, you get to find out that there is, you know, just like there is no other JAINA or Shilpa or Mohit in this world, in the same way, each of our animals that we've rescued are individuals, and there is no other cow like Tito or another pig like Felix or Franklin. They're individuals, and they have their own likes and dislikes, and you know, one likes to eat squash and the other one doesn't, and you know, we really get to know them as individuals, and they're incredibly smart. Like even the birds, the chickens that we have, they're just so smart. It goes against the face of the common perception about these animals. And those are the stories that we share to help people connect with them.
And I think this is a wonderful transition point. We will take the rest of the questions after the video that Shaleen and Shilpi will share. You know, in times of COVID, it's a little harder to organize in-person visits, but now we have a chance to take a virtual tour. So maybe we can have that video and then we can resume Q&A after that's over.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we have a video that I want to share. It is a little bit dated, but it's a really great video and I'd love to show it. So some of the statistics in the video you'll hear are a little bit dated, and I will give an update thereafter. So here we go.
As kids, we have this amazing love for animals. There's this imaginative world where animals are friends, and so often those animals are farm animals. And at some point in life, quite a few of us end up losing that connection. We're all against animal abuse, and we know that animals deserve compassion and care. What we somehow have a disconnect with is billions and billions of animals being highly abused. Babies are being pulled away from their mothers. Individuals that are the fourth smartest species on the planet being crammed into a crate where they can barely move for the rest of their lives. This abuse is mostly done behind closed doors, and without knowing, a lot of us support it. So the work we do opens up the curtain and talks about these issues and how it connects to the one individual that we might have been able to save from that suffering. It starts with rescuing individuals in the most horrific conditions. We rescue them, give them a tremendous amount of love, and then we get to tell their story.
Brinkley, Garth, and Gilmore came from a neglect case. They actually were born in a shed that didn't have any ventilation, no windows, but they were rescued, and Brinkley, Garth, and Gilmore came here. Out of the three, Gilmore is the sweetest. He loves his belly rubs. Brinkley kind of just does her own thing, and Garth is definitely the alpha boy. They're all just friends. I feel so lucky to be able to take care of them.
We actually just welcomed home a flock of chickens who came from the Kaporos rituals. For the rituals, young birds have their wings pinned back and they're flung over the heads of the practitioner 3 times before they're slaughtered in the streets. This flock of chickens who just came home to Luvin Arms experienced grass on their feet for the first time, love from humans for the first time, and they're getting the care that they so desperately need and deserve.
Tito came from the dairy industry, and because he was born a male, he was considered unwanted. He was put on a veal transportation truck along with other babies and was being sent to slaughter when the driver found it in his heart to reach out to other sanctuaries to give them a forever home. Tito is like a big puppy. He's super curious, playful, loving. The cowboys have taught him so much. They actually taught him how to be a cow and not a puppy. And in return, Tito taught the cowboys how to bond with humans and that it's okay to build a connection with us, that we are friendly and it is a safe environment for them to grow and thrive.
When somebody comes in and gets to hear Tito's story and see in his eyes how playful he is, it shifts in them how they think about an individual that is just disposed of in the dairy industry.
Sanctuaries are not only important for the rescue aspect, but the education and outreach aspect can do even more than saving just one life. Since Luvin Arms has opened, we've had about 6,000 visitors, and a lot of people come for tours because that is one of the best ways to meet the residents, learn about their stories and how they got here, and what we can do to help them in our everyday lives.
What I really get joy from is bringing kids here with their parents, their families, and taking them on tours and allowing them to really connect with that individual animal and to tell their story and to get them to make that connection with their companion animals. And then they can start to see the parallels and start to be the change.
Luvin Arms is powered entirely by volunteers. We have a community of over 1,000 individuals who are helping to make this place run every day. Something that I think is really special about what Luvin Arms has is just the way that we just take care of each other. I feel a kinship among our volunteers when I come in and I see a group working together, not just contributing to the work, but also, how are you? What's going on in your life? It's just a family is what it feels like.
Being involved with the community, people who are truly dedicated, each and every one, to the welfare of the residents and to spreading the compassion to the larger community is inspiring to me. Every visit to Luvin Arms is uplifting. It's good for my soul.
We've come a long way in 3 years, but there's so much work to be done. We need your help. When somebody gets to truly connect with an individual here at Luvin Arms, it changes the core beliefs that they might have come in with. We're currently about to serve 6,000 visitors. You can help us reach 60,000. We're saving dozens of lives, but you can help us save hundreds.
We're 100% donor funded, and every dollar really does make a difference for the animals.
I want to deeply thank our entire community, our volunteers and donors. We could not do this life-saving work without you. Thank you.
Thank you for that really wonderful video. That was so moving. You showed the connection with Tito and with dairy cows. Can you tell us more about your journey? What prompted your decision to go vegan? And then maybe are there any lessons to be learned for us that have grown up? Many of us may have grown up vegetarian about connecting to dairy animals and the transition to go vegan?
Yeah, with I was pregnant with my first son, and right after he was born, every time, nursing him, he would throw up and have acid reflux and eczema on his face, which was very unusual for me. It's like just a newborn baby having these problems doesn't seem right. So then the pediatrician at that time gave me a list of foods, and dairy was the top one. He's like, eliminate this from your diet and your son will be fine, and do it for 6 months. And then and so that's how I went vegan. But the 6 months was in my mind. But then the question that came up to my mind was, why just my son? I've grown having dairy. My husband, Shaleen, has had dairy. My parents, his parents, everybody has lived up to now having dairy and had no problems. So why just my son? And that made me go in deeper into doing more research about dairy, and the more deeper I went, the more I found out about the cruelty and how the male calves are unwanted, and how the cows are pregnant. They're made pregnant every year, and their babies taken away for the milk for humans to consume, which is meant for their babies. And that was the moment. I told Shaleen, was like, this is it. I mean, not I didn't know more about anything about veganism at that time, but that was the point where I decided I'm not going back to having dairy. Shaleen joined me 2 years later, and yeah, and so I attribute to my son, my older son. He was an inspiration for us. Maybe God sent him to us to go vegan and to change this world, and send that message through animals, for the animals, through him. And yeah, and then my younger son was born in 2014, and soon after his birth, animals just came into our lives. So Holly came into our lives in May of 2014, and then it was no turning back from there. So I think our two kids have been our inspiration and us, our biggest supporters.
It's wonderful. So touching. It seems like the kids have enlarged your family to include the animals too.
Yes, they have. They have.
Well, I think there may be constraint within the webinar format to participants showing their videos. So we really appreciate that you're all here. And how about if we, Kamlesh, we can put a hold on that idea to have the participants show their video, but we can resume some of the Q&A. Let's take another couple questions. Well, I think there might have been one from the previous time that's still in the box, and maybe a question or two from Mohit and Shilpa, and then we'll run our poll before the next presentation segment.
Sounds good. So there was one additional question from the audience from Hiral Shah. She said, hi, what was the transition like to go from your day-to-day job to starting the sanctuary, and how did you manage balancing it?
Yeah, there was no balance. The transition was harsh and quick. At the early days of the sanctuary, we were essentially at the sanctuary maybe 60, 70 hours a week. Our two boys, I mean, they essentially grew up there. Avi was still in diapers, and there were days that we couldn't even get to changing his diaper for such a long time. And him taking a bath was in the horse trough once or twice. But we managed. Luckily I had a business where things were a bit flexible, and we could do that. And our community, our volunteers, just really made it all possible. They were there with us every step of the way and helping in everything.
We wouldn't have been able to do it all by ourselves, but our volunteers being there with us, step by step, it really helped as well.
Yeah.
But the first 2 years, both of us pretty much put in 80 hours a week. First 3 years, I would say. And our kids were with us, working or playing at the sanctuary.
That's incredible. I have a personal question for you. When you first transitioned to vegan, how was the support socially, and what are some things that you did to help normalize being vegan within the social aspect?
So I'll say Shilpi was kind of the moral leader in our extended family. She went vegan first and really was held to the convictions. She did not have the social support that we normally would. She had kind of enthusiastic support from her the family, but it would have been very easy for her to have slipped back and say, you know what, I'm just going to now resume consuming dairy because everybody else around me is, and we have to drive 20 minutes just to go get
I think Whole Foods was the only store that had some kind of non-dairy milk, and I told Shaleen, forget about it. I'm gonna, I'm fine without milk and all the dairy products. So yeah, and we were in Florida at that time, so it was not very common to see vegan or just hear about vegan, the word vegan or veganism at that time.
I think until we started the sanctuary, we hadn't had, like sit down at a table with friends or family or anybody and actually have just a full vegan meal, like everybody eating vegan.
Sharing a vegan meal with somebody, but But our now, I would say 80% of our family has gone vegan, family and extended family. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. An additional audience question was, do you have any pets in your house in addition to your full farm of animals?
So we had once in a while we had fostered some of our animals from the sanctuary. So normally when we do rescues, they come from these horrifically abusive situations, and most often they're very sick. So we have to isolate the animals that we rescue for some time until they are well again before they can join the rest of the sanctuary animals. So we have fostered in our home. One of them, you may have seen a photo of Robbie the chicken on a swing with our boys. So she stayed with us during that time. And more recently, we had also adopted a dog, Blue, who came into our lives. But what has happened, which is very, disheartening and challenging for us, is over this time, our older son has developed some severe allergies from hay and dust, and it's hard for him to be at the sanctuary, and those allergies have progressed into asthma. And Blue actually, was with us, and he continued to get worse asthma. And now Blue is more of a sanctuary dog, and he's more at the sanctuary than he is here at our home.
Thank you. And can we come as a volunteer for a week with the kids in the near future? If yes, what help can we do during the visit? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We love having volunteers come, visitors come from all around the world. And there is a lot of different things that can be done at the sanctuary. Everything from helping to care for the animals to help with some construction project. There's always even some office work to be done. So absolutely. We're looking forward to this pandemic getting resolved so we can have more volunteers and more visitors coming from all over.
As a follow-up to that, how has COVID kind of impacted this year in terms of volunteering, donations, your just operations in general?
Yeah, it was a severe hit. I mean, we were such a physical place to be. Our volunteers, visitors, community members were always coming in and out of the sanctuary. And with COVID, we've had to put in a lot of restrictions that's impacted our community and the work. Even our education work, we were doing so much in person with tours and classes and events, and we couldn't do any of that. But because of COVID and because we couldn't do that, it pushed us to go virtual. And what's amazing is we have been able to reach close to 30,000 people this year because we're virtual, in over close to 20 different countries because we're virtual. We now have a program in partnership with a school in India, in Kerala, where they're bringing hundreds of students from India to see the sanctuary virtually. We are doing all sorts of different programs like that, which has broadened our impact and our reach. So in some ways it's been challenging, but in others it's given us opportunities that we may not have done earlier.
Well, shall we have the next? This is wonderful. I think that COVID has provided a lot of opportunities to pivot how we do things, including this webinar series, right? And so we'll continue to collect questions. Let's do a poll, and then we have another presentation in which Shaleen and Shilpi might be able to give us a flavor for how they're able to do education online, because we'll be part of that process. So let's do a poll. Kamlesh, by the one about the second one that we had, the second poll. If we could run the poll.
Sure.
We'll give it another.
Yep.
We'll give it up to a minute. We'll give it however long to get some more responses, up to a minute.
Yeah, and there might be some people on the phone that cannot see the poll, but we're asking a question if you're vegetarian or vegan or neither of those two. And
right now it's neck and neck between the vegetarians and the vegans. We've got zero neither. Right, the vegans are ahead at the moment.
So we'll give it another 10 seconds and then we'll close the poll. We'll show you the results. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and here are the results.
So a little more than half are already vegan, and it's wonderful. And the ones that are vegetarian, thank you so much for being open to hearing this conversation. And we'll turn it back over to Shaleen and Shilpi to give us a flavor of the online education and a participatory experience and what it's like.
Thank you. So let me share just a moment. Okay. Can you see the slides?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so part of what we do at the sanctuary beyond the rescue is really changing hearts and minds. And what I want to talk about first is why. Like, what is the scale of this problem that we are trying to solve? And there's 9 billion land animals killed for food every single year in just America alone, here in the US, and over 56 billion worldwide. And now it's a huge number. It's very hard to imagine a number as big as 9 billion. So I want to try to illustrate how big that number is. So if you think of 1 million seconds, that's 12 days, okay? But 1 billion seconds, like how many days is that? I wish I could ask you guys like answer me. Like, how many days is that? Because most people just cannot fathom a billion seconds, because it is 31.7 years. And that's 1 billion. So 9 billion seconds is 285 years. Now just imagine that's how many animal lives are being killed and consumed here in America alone every single year. So what's the solution? We can't rescue them all. What we must do is remove animals from plates and cups by changing hearts and minds. Because one person for just 1 month without animal products can spare 30 animal lives, 620 pounds of carbon dioxide, 900 square feet of a forest, and over 33,000 gallons of water. It creates such an immense impact to just have one person give up animal products. And it usually doesn't stop there. When one person does, like Shilpi, she changed her whole family. And the ripple effect continues. So we must spread ahimsa and karuna and change hearts and minds. That's the only way we can create true impact for animals. So at Luvin Arms, how do we do that? How do you get people to change? And this is our formula. That we believe that change doesn't just happen because now you're educated and now you'll make a different choice, or it doesn't happen just because you've been told to do something different. We believe a cultural change as deep and immense as this, giving up what you know from your whole life, that is your way of eating and connecting with your community, that change requires something more. And we believe it requires a community. It requires you to have had experiences that help you connect the information that you learn. And then most of all, you have to be inspired to change. So at Luvin Arms, we provide all of that. We have a community at Luvin Arms that, we host events that normalizes plant-based foods. We have, hundreds and hundreds of people come to our spring and fall fests. I believe the last one, Spring Fest, when we could have it without COVID last year, we had close to 1,800 people. I think we had close to about 1,800 people there. And it really connects community. We host book talks, yoga. We just allow people to find that community of like-minded people where they can feel safe to explore that change. And then we give experiences at Luvin Arms, really helping people connect with farmed animals in ways that they never have done so. And getting to really understand just how amazing farmed animals are. It creates those experiences that really live within you, that help you piece the information together. And for information, we host cooking classes and nutrition classes, and we have pediatricians who come and give talks and seminars. We've had nutritionists and even plant-based athletes that are performing at Olympic levels have given panels and talks to the community, so people can really get that information from a good source. We've
had the farm dinner.
Yeah, we do farm dinners. This is a Spanish language tour. And just we even have this tour guide here in the middle. That's Erica. She even does magic with her tours that really connects and attracts people in such an amazing, beautiful way. And inspiration is such a key to making change. And everything we do at Luvin Arms keeps that in mind. Our facilities, the way that the animals are cared for, even on the inside, that this isn't a dark, dingy home. This is a bright, open space that truly values each individual and their needs. each of our residents have their nameplates in their home, that you can really connect with them individually. And with art and stories, you can really feel inspired by animals in a very different way. And the results are just amazing. Like, for example, they came and visited and just fell in love with Franklin the pig. This girl who's hugging Franklin got up in that moment and said, "I'm never having bacon again." And this little girl, she came and, here she was with Dot. And, she told her mom, "Mom, I don't want to eat eggs. I don't want to eat chicken nuggets." And those are the types of change that we see through the work that we do. And what I wanted to try and just give everybody a small example of this is, we'll do a live example. How does change happen? How do you change hearts and minds? And what I want to do, and I know I appreciate it in the poll, thank you, but everyone who's a vegetarian, if you raise your hand in Zoom, if you go into participants, you can click, raise hand. And thank you for doing that. And what I will do now is really go into this and tell you a story, just like we do at the sanctuary. And the story is about Tito, Murphy, and Gideon. Here they are. They're just days old. Within 24 hours of them being born at a dairy facility in Texas, where there were over 5,000 cows in this dairy facility. They were born and they were taken away from their mother. They didn't even get to have the first milk. And they were put on a veal transportation truck and were being sent to a veal farm in Colorado. And the truck driver, found it in his heart to let us have the extra ones. And here they were, Tito, Murphy, and Gideon. We went to go get them, and they were just so frail. They were in such horrific conditions. They were crying. They had diarrhea. They had, pneumonia. They were coughing, and they were not interested in living. And they just had such an incredibly hard time, even as we took the three of them to the hospital directly. Unfortunately, Gideon did not make it very early on. And Tito and Murphy were the only survivors. And then Murphy started to get sick again. He did not have the mother's first milk, which gives them the immunity to be able to survive early bacterial or viral infections. And he went back to the hospital, and Tito was there comforting him the whole way as Murphy was slowly dying of pneumonia. He slowly just couldn't breathe. And this ends up being the fate of millions of babies in the dairy industry. This is not anything new or extraordinary. Their lives are deeply impacted by our choices. And we have the choice, we have the freedom to be able to make different choices that can spare their lives. And unfortunately, Murphy also passed, and Tito was the only one left. So as we tell this story, for the individuals who raised your hands as vegetarians, please raise your hands again if it made an impact for you and if you would consider trying plant-based milks instead. Thank you. And so that shows you just the power of inspiration and connection and stories that we create change by at the sanctuary. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think it's just so powerful what you do and how you communicate and how you educate. The inspiration piece is just a connection to the heart. It's not through our brains, right? And as we take some more questions in the Q&A box, and I'll invite Shilpa and Mohit again to help us with moderating and posing their own questions. I'm going to seed one more question to get us started. So we talked about dairy, and that's an area that traditionally Jains do consume. There's another area that I think, especially those of us raised in the West, including the US, really struggle with understanding, which is why Jains don't eat eggs. I've never gotten a great answer. I've gotten answers about, like, maybe there's something about eggs being potential life, and then people raise questions about whether it's a fertilized or an unfertilized egg. And I've come to learn that there's a different reason that we might choose to avoid eggs, knowing what happens, you know, with chickens and hens and the egg production. So I wondered if you could address that a little bit, you know, maybe a story or just describing what happens, whatever might be a good way to tell us more about eggs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very important subject, and thank you for asking that question. You know, there was a time when I also felt that, you know, eggs, like, what's wrong with them, right? They're not usually fertilized, and you're not killing a chicken by taking the eggs. What's the difference between that and milk? And in some ways, there isn't much difference. There is just as much suffering in both of those things. And with eggs, especially, you know, there's numerous things. So one of them being, in a natural wild chicken, you know, where they came from, they're you know, jungle birds.
And I would say it as the way God created them.
That's right.
They would only lay 12 to 15 eggs a year.
That's right. And now it's an egg a day. An egg a day, and it takes so much out of a chicken's body to create and lay an egg. And when we watch, you know, with the chickens that are rescued, they lay eggs, and when we see them, like, you can tell that it's a painful experience, just like giving birth for humans is. And, you know, it takes an effort, and it takes a lot of vitamins and minerals out of their body to create that egg, which makes them suffer.
As well. Yeah. It takes a lot of calcium out of their body.
So the chicken's life in an egg, you know, egg factory is horrible. You know, first of all, when they're born, the boys are crushed. They're put into a grinder, and they're become dog food. The girls get put, you know, they get their toes clipped off, they get their beaks clipped off without any pain medication, and they get put into tiny cages with several others where they're going to live the rest of their lives. And
cages where they can't even turn.
They can't even turn.
And around, yeah.
It, you know, so the product that comes from that is a product of immense suffering. And those chickens, their lives are also incredibly shortened. You know, they only get to live several months, you know, a little more than a year, and not their full lifespan, because at some point their bodies get spent and they don't lay as many eggs, and the industry then disposes of them very early in their lives. And even if they make it to a sanctuary as the ones that we have rescued, the egg laying process is so terrible to their bodies that most of them end up getting ovarian cancer very early in their lives. And what we do to try to help them is there is a hormonal implant that we can give them every 6 months that actually stops them from laying eggs, because it's such a harmful thing for their body.
It gives a break to their body from laying eggs, because I've seen it. The cries you could feel and hear, and it just brings the pain that I had when my son, both my boys were born. It just reminds me of that pain. It's like that's how much they feel every single day.
It's really interesting, right, about how the products that we know as Jains that we're not to consume animals directly as meat, but eggs and milk are all part of the reproductive cycle. And so like it's something that we as women can really identify with, like you were talking about. And I'm thinking about like, the implant the hormonal implant is sort of like a hen menopause or something like that. Like they're animals just like we are, right?
Yeah.
And a connection is just obscured in normal life. But when you're doing the work that you're doing and you're seeing them and you're working with them and you're educating people about it, that connection between us and the animals is just so much more clear. So I know it's a little over an hour now. We still have more time in the webinar. In case people aren't going to stay, I want to remind people about supporting Luvin Arms. As Jains, historically, people in India used to buy animals off of the slaughterhouse, and Shaleen and Shilpi are doing the work of rescuing the animals, caring for them, nursing them back to health, educating the community. And so please consider supporting them. And now we'll come back to our Q&A. And I think there might be one more question pending in the chat, and then I'll turn it over to Mohit and Shilpa for additional questions that they may have. And we still have another segment to share from Shaleen and Shilpi. So it's not over. I'm just reminding people periodically about supporting the sanctuary.
Thanks, Gina. There was one additional question from Kayor. He asked this prior to the presentation. You touched on it briefly, but I'll just ask if you can expand on it a little bit. Do you have visitors that come that are outside of the vegan community, and do you think they left thinking differently about the animals after?
Absolutely. That's the whole reason why we do what we do is, we don't want to preach to the choir. We need to really connect and reach the people who have not made that change yet. So yes, the majority, most of all of our events are targeted to reach those audiences. And when they do come, we do surveys at the end of tours, at the end of events, and we overwhelmingly get a response that they will consider making changes in their lives.
We've had volunteers as well that come in just because they see there's an animal sanctuary and they want to help and they want to volunteer, but they're not vegan or vegetarian, but volunteering and making that connection with the residents at the sanctuary, they just, and then hearing the stories from, different people that have been at the sanctuary for a longer time, they eventually transition to being vegan. So we have had actually a lot of volunteers from the beginning. We've had a lot of volunteers that have not been vegan or vegetarian, but transitioned themselves because then I never thought about this. I never knew that this is how, because we don't go dive deep into doing research or finding more, but then they do get to know. And then they also get resources and help from the sanctuary of how to transition if they need to.
I have a question. This is something that I receive a lot from Jains that I know. Does not milking a cow hurt the cow? Could you dive in a little bit to supply and demand and what it means to take milk from the cow?
Yeah. So cows are mammals just like us, and they produce milk for their babies just like us. And just how when a mother no longer needs to produce milk for her baby as a human, very similarly with cows, they slowly stop producing milk if their baby or there's nobody milking them.
Someone asked in the chat Q&A, I may have missed this earlier in the session, but are there opportunities to volunteer virtually? I know you addressed a little bit, but maybe you can expand more on how the virtual volunteering or experiences work with Luvin Arms.
Yeah, Yeah, we definitely, what we need help with most of all virtually is really connecting our work with the broader Jain community, and really helping to make sure that other Jains know about the sanctuary so they can connect with the work and also support us. I think our two boys are here. They just want to come say hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for everything you're doing for the animals.
He went to go get his little brother.
Oh.
How old are they now?
That's okay.
The little one's being shy.
How old are they?
They're now 9 and 6.
Do we have any other questions, or should we go to the next part of the presentation?
I think we can go to the next part now.
Okay. So in addition to helping volunteer, spread the word, when possible, visiting, donating, there's something that we can think about in our everyday communications too. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Shaleen to share that with us.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Okay. So we do get asked quite a bit, like, what can we do? Like, what is it that we can do locally? How can we, be a part of making this change? And so there's 5 simple things that I want to share that you can do that will make an impact for animals everywhere. So first and foremost, of course, go animal free. Remove animal products from your plates, cups, and closets. The closet is often overlooked. Or what we wear, either silk or wool or leather, has a deep impact on animals and the planet. And this is the fun part, is enjoy and share the plant-based bounty. Nowadays, there's just so much choice available for every single type of food that you can think of that is made 100% plant-based and completely cruelty-free. And here are a few of our favorites that I want to share. This cheese from Violife tastes just like a mole cheese, in our opinion. This yogurt by Kite Hill tastes just like dahi, and this Oatly milk is just so similar to cow's milk, it makes a delicious tea. So try out, and there's hundreds of others, so try them, enjoy them, share them with your friends and family. And next is, let's upgrade our thoughts. Because our thoughts really create reality around us. And, some of the things that we think about, like one of them is that animals are dumb and they're voiceless. And that even sometimes when you want to do good for animals, we think, I'm helping the dumb. I'm helping, someone who doesn't have a voice. And we need to change that narrative, because it's not that animals are voiceless. It's us who think we have the only language. We don't know how to understand and listen and communicate with animals sometimes. So we should change that thought and that narrative. And change the thought of ownership. Can a thinking, feeling animal be owned like an object? Like, can you, instead of a dog's owner, maybe it's a dog's guardian or a dog's friend. So let's change our thinking. And then let's upgrade our words, because words have power. Like insults, calling somebody a jackass, or in our Gujarati, calling somebody a gadero, or someone pig-headed. Are you insulting the person or the animal? So just really think about the words that we use and how we use them that creates the reality around us for the animals. Some of the other more common things are, these types of idioms, like, people often say, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. let's change those words that puts animals in harm. Instead we can say feed 2 birds with 1 scone, or instead of take the bull by the horns, we can say take the flower by the thorns. Or beat a dead horse, you can say feed a fed horse. Or more than 1 way to skin a cat. Instead of that, let's say more than 1 way to peel a potato. Just let's be more mindful in what we say and how we say things, because it creates an impact in the world around you. And lastly, please support us. Let's put Ahimsa in action. You can donate, you can visit, even virtually, and tell your friends and family about us, because the greater our community is, the more we can do for the animals. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think that really helps us to bring it back to everyday actions in so many ways. If there are any more questions, we still have a few minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. So please put more questions in the Q&A box if you have any particular questions, and we'll even take comments and feedback at this point.
So there is a question, sorry to interrupt, that kind of ties into what they were just talking about with donations. Dr. Kritika Shah asked, can anyone adopt rescued animals at the sanctuary for a year or so? How does like donations and virtual adopting, and if you can talk to more about where the money goes and what the biggest needs are?
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, we do have a animal sponsorship program on our website. So you can go there and choose, the species that you want to sponsor, or even a particular individual that you want to sponsor. There's even, we have wish lists for toys and enrichment items that our animals want and need. So you can even, give them a toy, and you'll get back a photo or a video of them playing with it. The sponsorship funds and any other funds that are marked as due there, they go 100% to the animals, just for the, their food and care is where the funds go.
And I see you even have a Luvin Arms face mask on your web shop.
Yeah, the sign of the times, right?
We have a question about the presentation, if it's being recorded, and can they share it with family and friends, Gina?
It is being recorded. Kamlesh has kindly done that, enabled the recording, and I will certainly put a recording link on our website, veganjains.com, and we will also email the link to everyone who registered, whether they attended or not. So you'll be able to forward an email that you get, and then also I'll put the link on veganjains.com, which is the website for the Ahimsa EcoVegan Committee. And lovely to see your son again, and the younger one that was hiding for a while.
This is Arav. This is Avi.
Maybe while they're here, you guys can touch base a little bit about how you're raising them, like diet-wise, and teaching them things through the sanctuary, and about Jainism as well, and the values. If you could share a little bit more about how you're upbringing your family.
Yeah. So yeah, both of them have been vegan since birth, and they get to really, they were part of the everyday of creating the sanctuary. So they got to see the hard work that went into building something for others and the community. And they get to hear the stories. Yeah, rescuing animals.
They would come on rescue trips.
They've been there. They've heard the story of each resident from often from start to finish. Sometimes they've been part of seeing the loved ones pass, and it has created in them just this very deep understanding of the value of life and the sanctity of that, and just the that animals are very much like us. And what we truly believe about our Jain values are, it's a philosophy of life. It's the way of life, and living the values is the truest meaning of our religion. And that's what we focus on with them, is helping them understand and live those values on a day-to-day basis.
And that's why we've called this Ahimsa in action.
That's right.
I guess a personal question from my end is, as Jains, most of us are already vegetarian, if not leaning more towards the plant-based vegan diet. With my parents, and as I'm sure many in the audience and family members, they struggle with just getting that last hurdle from dairy to no dairy. Sure. What are the biggest, is there a takeaway or a lesson or words of encouragement that we can get these folks, including my own parents, who I've had this conversation many times, to kind of get to that next level eventually?
Sure. I think it's a cultural change. It makes a very big, it takes a huge amount of effort to change something that you've grown up with, for your whole life, and you've seen your parents, do something and grow up with. It takes a tremendous amount of shift, and that shift becomes much easier when they have something to replace that's just as tasty and just as delicious, much more, much better for the animals and the planet. So a lot of times with Indians, I found that it's tea and it's yogurt. And if you can replace those with something that tastes just as good, then it becomes much easier to step forward. But as a word of encouragement, I truly believe that in the next couple of decades, we will see a complete shift away from animal-based products worldwide. And there are some incredible innovations happening in food science that are bringing equivalent products by plants, but also by cellular. There's even companies now making cow's milk without the cow that molecularly is identical to cow's milk and has absolutely no negative impact to the animals and much smaller impact to the planet. And there will be that change that will happen where we as a society move away from animal agriculture. The opportunity we have today is to really promote and invest into that movement.
And I think that
I would just like to add.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I would just like to add to that is that the animal-based products, one, they're not meant for humans, but two, they've been causing so many diseases and heart disease, some of the skin as well. And I've also brought that topic up and how it helps when you transition into a plant-based diet, how it helps, to reverse a lot of those diseases, and you could get back to and still be able to enjoy some of the products like tea or yogurt or chash which are just plant-based. And a lot of the products now taste just like what dairy tasted. It's been years for me, but I guess when I try the plant-based products, I remember, oh wow, this taste is just like what I used to have when I was a child. So yeah, the health part has helped quite a bit in bringing that forward to family for us.
And I'll just say that we will be including in our webinar series aspects of the health benefits from a pediatrician. We'll include heart disease. This has actually struck very close in my family recently as well, my extended family. I think almost every one of us in the Indian community, in the Jain community, know of someone who's been affected by heart disease, sometimes very suddenly. And there's so much good data about the health benefits of a plant-based diet that we're definitely going to provide some resources on that coming up. I think we have another few questions which we should address. And then I'd like to invite everyone. I think Christian has found a way to figure out how to have everyone show their video. So let's do that before the end. But let's address the other couple questions that might have come in as well.
Okay, how effective is vegan outreach at Jain temples? I have Jain friends who are not vegans even after being informed about the issues of milk. Hindus are a different story. Can you please expand on getting connected with Jains that are not vegan?
Yeah, I think a lot of our donors who are Jains, they may not be vegan, but they understand the values that we're trying to put forth in this world, and the lives that we're saving, and they're some of our biggest supporters. And so it doesn't, you don't have to be vegan to support us.
And there's an additional question, which both Shaleen and actually Gina, you can talk to this as well. Do you have substitutes for yogurt on your website? And maybe is there a slide that has a substitute for all kind of products, whether it's tofu or meat alternatives? Is there a good resource to find all that information?
Yeah, I think there's tons of really great resources, and I'm sure, I think Gina probably also has some that she could email out to the participants.
We don't have those right now on our website, but we are working on putting those resources together to be putting it up on the website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say yogurt, Kite Hill,
yeah,
unsweetened almond yogurt. It is just like dahi, and you can make kadhi with it and chash with it, and it tastes delicious.
Just add lemon when you make chash. Just add lemon in it, and it tastes just like dairy chash.
And if people will indulge us for a little bit over the 10:30 end time, so if we have a few more minutes, I'd like to give you some more ideas, and then we'll close as well. So there's the new vegan. I've been vegan since 1990. And at that time, there really weren't a lot of alternatives readily available. And so what I learned in my own experience was your tastes change. Initially, there's a lot of craving. Like cheese was really hard for me to get unattached from. I was really I'd grown up with pizza. It was normal as a kid to go to parties and have cheese pizza and have ice cream. Those things were very hard to give up. But the cravings do change and they go away over time. And these days, like the products that Shaleen and Shilpa put up, there's some alternatives that taste amazing. So you don't even have to give up the craving. You can actually eat the stuff that tastes very similar to the dairy that you might be used to. And then, Christian and I lived a year in India in 2015, and my perspective was different. I have grown up in the US. I hadn't grown up in India. And I became vegan when I was a college student here in the US. So going back to India, where I didn't have as much ready-made vegan products, made us need to improvise on our own. So we learned to make things very simply and on our own. And for example, you can make cashew cheese very simply, like a cashew cream cheese. If you have some sort of starter, and in India, the climate is such that if you have the liquid on top of wheat berries, that's a culture, it's a starter. You add that to the soaked cashews, the soaked blended cashews, and it becomes fermented like a cream cheese. Even in India now, soy milk is you can get it almost everywhere. And we were able to take peanut butter, which we were able to get at the grocery store in India, blend it with chocolate soy milk and freeze it, and that was our vegan ice cream in India. And this is like improvising. There's others in India that do incredible things like culturing dairy using pepper stems. Like we've never done that here. Now here in the US, Christian and I sometimes make our own non-dairy yogurt. Like if you get a Kite Hill or some other kind of yogurt to start with, and then you put it in your Instant Pot on the yogurt setting with milk, you can culture your own, just like people traditionally make their own dairy at home. So we have all kinds of resources on the webpage that we've put in the chat that have some listings. We have links to other sites. There's another Jain photographer who has really beautiful pictures and alternate dairy alternatives. So So take a look at that. Feel free to email me, veganjanes@gmail.com. Take a look at the website, reach out, and if I can't answer it, I'll reach out to others in my committee. But we're here to help in whatever way that we can. But we really do appreciate your attendance, and we like seeing the kids as well. Thank you for coming also. And so I'll just remind everyone that we'll have some upcoming webinars. We'll address health issues. We'll address alternatives to animals in medical research and testing. And I'll put further information on veganjanes.com. And with a little bit more advance notice, I'm hoping to also get some information to the webinars out through other channels like the JAINA newsletter that comes out through the JAINA headquarters. So this is the first, and I'm really excited. I'm so happy that you were able to kick us off, Shaleen and Shilpa, with a wonderful presentation. And this will not be the last. We'll have more presentations, which will help complement us and help us in our journey as a community to expressing our ahimsa in action. And so I'd like to invite Shilpa to close with Namodyantanam.
Namo Aryantaram, Namo Sitaram, Namo Aryaram, Namo Uvajayaram, Namo Loe Savasahuram. Eso Panchanamokaro, Sava Pavapanasano, Mangalanam to Sarvesim, Paramama Havai Mangala.